Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's already a victory for me here this morning because my whole goal is to practice speaking. So here I am. So you guys are guinea pigs. Hope you guys don't mind. John Close already heard that line. He had the opportunity to listen to me at the Naval Academy alumni chapter the other day. That was a 26-minute presentation. Now I got to chop it down to 6. So bear with me just a little bit here. We'll see what we can do. So WA United, the first question I get is never what products are you making, what industry you're in. It's always what the heck is a WA. So WA United, well, first of all, WA stands for community over self. So that's quite literally our slogan. It's actually a Japanese word. So we were looking for something that said we care about others, we want to do things for others, we're not just about making a dollar. We're trying to look for a proper way to say that, and so we came up with this. So that's where the background comes from. So our purpose, if we put it together just a little bit though and go beyond just, hey, we want to do good things for others, what does that really mean? Well, there's two first parts. One is innovative technological solutions, and then the other part is our intellectual property. And we want to put that together to make a positive impact on the world. So I'll tell you a little bit about this diagram here. Most of you are probably familiar with the first 3 boxes. So most companies, they think something up. They get a great idea, right? Light bulb goes off and they've thought of something that they think might be marketable out there. Then they take it over to the lab and they get all their engineers and creative people to start tinkering on it, building models, prototypes, and so on, and see if they can actually bring it to market. And then usually the third part is usually the last part for most companies, where they say, okay, now we're going to market it, we're going to sell it, we're going to make a profit, and we're going to take that profit, we're going to give it to the shareholders, shareholders will be happy, and life is good, and we go on, right? Well, there's a fourth part for us, and this is the part that really is the most important to us, and that is that we want to take our profits and send them over to our foundation side, and we'll funnel those profits through our foundation to work on an initiative that's actually important to us. So in our case, our particular motivation is on homelessness. So I just mentioned and basically described what's called a social enterprise. So a social enterprise business model. Anybody here familiar with the social enterprise business model? Okay, several of you, all right. Unfortunately, Jim Sparks is not here today. Hey, Catrice. Jim Sparks is not here today. I'm sure he could run circles around me talking about what the social enterprise business model is. I'll keep it fairly simple for all of us today, but basically one definition of it is a company that seeks to maximize profits so they can maximize doing something good for the world, right? So part of what makes us special, our company, is we've got a couple of my business partners. I'm the business guy who gets out and talks to the public. And then we got a couple of guys who are not safe to talk to the public. They're the ones that hide in the lab and they invent mad things, right? So they've been all over the world. They've worked with the highest levels of individuals in multiple different governments and countries and so on, inventing crazy out-of-the-box things when there was an emergency and they needed an immediate solution. So they've always been looking outside the box, and they've come up with quite a few different inventions, things that they've sold off to Tesla and GE and so on. And then they came up with an invention. They said, we want to keep this, we want to bring it to market. And that's where we are today, because they said, you know what, we need to figure out an endless resource that we're never going to have to worry about running out of, unfortunately in this case, but will allow us to generate ongoing stream of profits that we can then use to help with the homeless, right? So we looked around and said, well, what on earth is an endless resource sitting around out there that nobody wants and people might even pay us to take? Well, every single country has waste. Tons of waste, unfortunately. So we said, oh, we might actually be able to solve 2 problems at the same time. Let's start dealing with the waste on a large volume and then use those dollars to help the homeless. Just how bad is it? Well, all of you guys are averaging 4.4 pounds of trash per day. Did you know that? 4.4 pounds of trash per day in America? Some of you are like, nah, I don't really believe it. In some of the cities in America, the people are averaging 8 to 9 pounds of trash per day, per person, okay? So you add that all up, and America generates 254 million tons of waste a year. That's 500 billion pounds. We want to convert it to a ton, measurement that I know a little bit better. So 500 billion pounds, new pounds of waste per year. The overall world does 4 trillion pounds of waste per year. That's not counting all the stuff that's already in the ground. That's new waste, all right? So we are going to tackle that with what we call our 60HT. Now I realize that's not a very sexy name. We're working on that with our marketing branding team. We'll get there. Quick little story behind it. It's actually supposed to be 60TH, as in 60 tons per hour. But one of our guys is dyslexic, so he called it 60HT, and we've inadvertently been calling it that ever since then. So the 60HT, like I just hinted at, is designed to be able to handle 60 tons of waste per hour. And it's designed to run 24/7. It's happy you're staying on and just keep on going. So if that's true and we can maintain the 60 tons per hour with this machine, translate that to pounds, we're talking 120,000 pounds an hour. We're talking over 2.5 million pounds per day, 24-hour period. And then we're talking upwards of 1 billion pounds in 1 year with one machine. So Pensacola would only need one, and we'd have room to spare. We could handle the entire county and then some. First city that called us and said, we've heard about you guys and we want some machines. What can you do for us? Well, we did the math and we figured out that just for the new waste that they generate every single year, they need about 60 machines. That's not counting any of the waste that's in the ground right now. So that's still only dealing with half the problem, but still certainly a big portion of it. So that's 60 machines for that right there. Now, I mentioned at the beginning and throughout really here that we want to help the homeless, but I'm sure all of you guys have heard that analogy, if you will, that you can feed a person a fish for a day, and you're really only feeding them for the day, right? But then you can also teach them how to fish and feed them for a lifetime. So our goal is not just to say, hey, we're going to make a lot of money and then we're going to start building food lines for the homeless and feeding them each day. What we want to do is really be able to give people an opportunity to get back on their feet again. It's all about giving them that chance to be self-sufficient, right? So for us, we're looking at saying, well, each machine needs about 100 people to operate it 24/7. Over 90% of those jobs, you need very little training or education or expertise. Over 90% of them, basically within a few hours, we could have them trained up on that particular position. We can provide them a job at better than average wages, better than average benefits, and be able to put them in a position where they're now able to get back on their feet. Not only for themselves, but for their family, for their communities, and so on, right? Another thing that I haven't really elaborated on with this machine, not only does it eliminate the waste, but it's able to salvage a lot of recyclables. So you think about things like copper, aluminum, and in our case, our hot button is going to be the plastics. We can take the plastics out of the system, out of the process, and repurpose them, right? So for us, we've already designed the molds, and I think this is one of the coolest things about the whole system, quite frankly, is we've designed the molds so that, picture a 2x4, gonna build a house, you need 2x4s, right? Well, we can actually take and use the plastics and make a 2x4 out of the plastics. And we can make every other single part that you would need to build a shelter. The system's already designed so that you can put them together without a single hammer or a single nail. You can't put any of the pieces together incorrectly. It's like, picture like Legos. You snap them together. Now Legos obviously you can snap together in multiple different ways, but for these it's only going to go correctly if you do it one way. So you don't need a single hammer nail, and somebody who has no education or training in the area of construction can now actually build their own shelter for themselves and for their communities with the positive byproducts we're able to pull out of this system coming from the waste that was sitting there rotting the day before in their ground. And now they've got shelters for themselves, for their family, and beyond. That all, of course, is more jobs, more positions, more employment, and so on for the community in that area. So we're not just looking at feeding somebody. We're now helping to say we can help you, ideally, to be able to get back on your feet as you're able. So I realize that probably brings up a whole lot of questions. But if I may, I wanted to elaborate that. I hinted earlier, I said, hey, I really wanted to get up and speak. Well, part of the reason I wanted to get up and speak is the other day, right before the holidays, I was asked to go. Anybody heard of TED Talks? Okay, so I've got to get ready for that stage. So I needed to start talking in front of people very quickly and say, hey, I've got to get some practice so I'm ready for that kind of a stage, right? And that's where you guys would come in. So you've been the willing guinea pigs today, and I really appreciate that. But I also want to ask you guys to, the one thing that I think that's what part of the purpose of presenting about the business here today was to now reach out to you guys and say, I need you guys to help me. So what I'm asking for is if you know of a club, like say Kiwanis, for example. Maybe you go to Kiwanis, you know whoever's in charge of the organization, maybe they need a speaker. Let me know after the meeting here if you don't mind so that I can go and practice my presentation a little bit more and get a little bit readier than I already am right now. So any other organizations, any other places you can think of, I'll go speak to a church, I'll go speak to a school, you name it, whatever it is right now, I just need to get in front so I get comfortable. All right? So now I'll start with the questions. Any? Once? Twice? Patrick.
So I'm pretty certain you have a competitor matrix somewhere. Could you just compare and contrast your solution technology fundamentals with what else is in the market?
There are several other different potential solutions for waste in the market. What's actually been the most popular, unfortunately, for the last 2 or 3 decades has been just incineration. Just plain up, burn the thing and let it go all up into the air. And that's been the real problem, right? It's just going up in the air, it's ruining our air. If it's sitting there rotting in the ground before you burn it, it's now affecting our soil and it's affecting our water. So for a lot of us, we haven't really thought about trash until probably just a couple years ago in 2018. China said, hey, we've been the world's dumping grounds, landfill, for the last 30 years. And the reason they were doing it, by the way, is they were getting paid very well to take everybody else's trash. So we weren't really solving the problem. We were just moving it to somewhere else and letting them deal with it. So they were getting paid for it. I think in 2018 we sent something like 68,000 containers over to China to bury in their backyard. Well, they started saying, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. We're running out of land now, and we're having problems with our health because they had been burning it inappropriately and so on. So that's one answer to your question. Now, there are other technologies out there. Some people are using an algae system. The problem with their algae system is in many cases it takes literally acres and acres and acres to be able to have enough algae to be able to handle processing the waste and eliminating the pollution part of it. Others have the ability to contain it, but the problem is that the filters are so expensive that are trying to capture and absorb all of the pollution that it's not financially feasible. So nobody's been able to get that to market and actually make $1, which of course blunts anybody's desire to actually go out there and do it. There's another system that's using plasma, I believe. Don't know a dang thing about plasma, honestly, other than that it's supposed to be really expensive, really complicated, and it tends to break down a lot, needs a lot of maintenance. So nobody's really been able to make that successful either. So there are several different versions of this, but nobody's really been able to say we need an efficient, effective way to do it that it's not going to break down, it's not going to let the pollutions out into the air inappropriately, and we can actually make $1 so we can keep doing this day after day and pay our employees and so on. Sir?
Yeah, just trying to understand. I mean, like, as the staff that you put on, I believe would be what, more separators can separate the product, or does your process already do the separation and pull out glass, pull out the plastics, pull out? Because I know there's a problem. Like, I live in Santa Rosa County, and we leverage
Right.
ECUA.
Sure.
And I know for the last year I've been doing my diligence and separating my stuff to put in the right thing. And
Right.
find out if you just go into my landfill in a whole different other pile just sitting there. Obviously, it's kind of a, you're troubling to me to go through that process. But I mean, you talk about the sustainability of building shelters for plastics. What about the glass? What about the other byproducts that are waste? I mean, have you guys got solutions for that?
We do. We can take our machine, by the way, it's the size-wise, the biggest piece is 8 feet by 8 feet by 10 feet. We can break it down, we can throw it on a couple of 18-wheelers, and we can drive it to anywhere around the country, quite frankly, around the world. We can stick it on containers, on ships, and send it to another country or what have you, and operate it. We can put it back together again wherever we want to set up and get people going. So our machine has a couple of different options. We can, part of it is burning. We do burn some aspects of it. So it really depends on the environment. We may say, hey, right now it's more important to just get rid of the waste. That's the most dire need right now. So we just cook it up higher and hotter, and we just shove it all through there, and the faster it goes through, the faster the waste is gone. In other areas, we say, hey, we're not quite as much of a rush, perhaps. We can take the time to separate out the various recyclables more extensively. So here's the copper, here's the aluminum, here's the plastics. If we see a need and want to use the glass and so on, then we can take and separate all that out. The cool thing is, like you touched on this, you guys all have the box at home, right? And you're worried about putting something in there.